I'm very fond of saying that time is meaningless, but timing is everything. And we're going to jump into that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. And on this podcast, we talk to all sorts of different interesting people on different topics because we want to learn what they have learned in their careers to make them so successful. Because behind every successful person is a mountain of learnings, failures, wrong ways, yield signs, you name it. We've had to experience it all, and that's part of the process. And there is no one better than the guest I have for you today. He's actually making his second appearance on the podcast, and I know he's learned so much and has so much great information to share with us this time. He is a business coach, a author, a keynote speaker, and an incredible human. So Coach Hess, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations to your success on this podcast and how it's taken off, and so many viewers and so many people growing through your leadership here. So thank you for that. We're
Oh,
grateful.
my pleasure, my pleasure. For people who maybe haven't heard the previous episode, which I will have down in the show notes so we can have the full kind of picture of who you are. You and I have known each other for several years. You were my business coach when I was getting started out. And so I'm just so grateful for your mentorship, your influence, your friendship, and support as we've both grown through life.
Yeah. So peaks and valleys, are true that happen. And like you were talking about in timing, and I just want to maybe talk a little bit about stories around being in a valley and how an opportunity mindset needs to be with us all the time. It doesn't happen just, when you get down and things are down, you got to say, hey, where's the opportunity? Because the growth mindset, I think, is what drives us in so many ways. In my case, my valley was very clear when, I made a transition into what I'm doing today, which has been fantastic in so many ways, but such a deep valley. Way back, 7, 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is not good.
Yeah.
And you kind of are in that deep valley going, what? Well, in the midst of that, coming out the other side, I figured out kind of what my why is, why I'm doing what it is. Because, when you're told to put an obituary together, when you're told to kind of get things in order, and you're getting messages from people as if you're going to be gone, it changes your perspective. And it changed mine in a big way. And within the process of going through that and comprehending that, I came out the other end. And obviously, I made the commitment to being a business coach, but I had to reach back and go, what is driving me? What's my why? What makes me do what I do all my life? And I kept thinking about that and thinking about it. And I came to this conclusion. When I was 8 years old, I had a basketball in the middle of a court. And I'm dribbling, the squeaking shoes, everything's going on. And I dished the ball off to somebody that made the layup to win the game. I felt fulfillment from that day forward in giving assist. I realized that that moment in my life is what drives me and has driven me throughout my life to give assist. And that's my why. So now that I'm in this business coaching situation, I know, why did it have to happen at 62? Why didn't I understand that better before? Even though I lived it, I didn't really have a grasp on it. Now I know very clearly, very directly what I'm doing in terms of my why. And that's out to give everybody as many assists as I can.
Oh, that's such a beautiful analogy. And even before you said the shoe squeak, I could hear it. I could see, the basketball court, I could be in the gymnasium and hear that. So that was just such a beautiful way of putting that together. But, the question that comes to my mind as you said that is you got a second chance at life. And so many people don't think of work as something they get to do. They think of it as something that they have to do in order to have a life, that it's just a means to an end. But here you get the second chance, you come through the cancer. Why go back to working instead of, quote unquote, retiring and enjoying life? Because that's what they tell us is on the other side for us, right?
Well, I certainly believe that I was, based on the story and how that all happened, where basically my heart was AFib, and they did a CAT scan on my, trying to get blood clot issue, whether you shock your heart back into sync, going through all that, and they went too low. in the CAT scan and came back and said, no blood clots, but this mass in your pancreas is for real. And all, full court press from that point forward, and I guess the key thing in terms of being in the valley and, at that point kind of going, whoa, my wife and I are looking at each other and going, ooh, this is tough times. Once I went through it and once I got, went through the surgery, believe it or not, my heart was out of sync while they did the surgery. Cardiologist, everybody in there. When I go into the recovery room, my heart goes back into sync. And they're going, maybe the stress of a tumor in somebody can create AFib because it's a stress disease. And so there's been some studies on that, and I felt good about being on the front end of it. In the end, when I was in that hospital and I'm in that, the ward where everybody's, kind of going through intestinal, whatever, they roll a lot of people out of there every night kind of thing. It's a very eerie place to be, and it was tough. But again, how deep in the valley am I and what's the opportunity? Well, they tell you get up and walk around. As soon as you have gut surgery, man, they want you to get moving and get everything working. So I started doing that. I'm walking down the hallways with my, all my stuff connected to me and started moving as soon as I could. I'm getting back. And then guess what? All of a sudden I had this urge to go into these rooms that people were laying in that they didn't move the whole time. I mean, from 2 hours before, they hadn't moved a bit in their beds. I started going in and talking to people. Again, here was my desire to give an assist. Did I know it at that point? I really didn't, but I'm thinking afterwards, why did I do that? Well, I did it, and I did it to about 8 different people. And you know what? The most important thing to these people, basically on their deathbed, is family. Every one of them. I learned that so clearly by doing, and so here I am in this valley and realizing, wait a minute, I'm coming out of this valley. I got opportunity. I can make a difference for my family, her family, everybody's family. And that's part of what drove me, when the conclusion of that, which really hit my heartstring, is, when they roll you out at the end after 7 days, I was in there and I was kind of in the back, and they put me in a wheelchair. They rolled me down, to take me out. And I'm ringing the bell, actually. As I'm rolling down, all these people that were in their beds and that were still there, were standing in their doors, clapping for me. I was like, I'm taking this somewhere.
Yeah.
So you can be in a valley, but you can come out of it and make a difference in a big way.
Now I'm all misty. Look what you've done. I'm gonna smear my mascara. Worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings back to where I started with time. I know that I've experienced it, and I think most people do, those moments in life where time expands and you are not conscious of the seconds ticking by. And then times where things contract. So I know that I'm not experiencing time linearly, and yet we're so forced and, so programmed to think of it in that way, in the 60 seconds and the 24 hours and all of those components. And here you're having something happen so major at 62, which if we put our time on a clock, you're at the 11th hour, right? Like
I'm on the back 9.
Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts in time, and especially what you've experienced in your life, the wisdom that you've learned? And I know that that's culminated into something recent that you just created, and I'd like to hear more about that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think, around the peak experiences thing and time slowing down, and that's really what I believe a peak experience is that we narrow right into total focus. We have no feelings about anything. Everything is right. It's perfect. Your body's perfect. Whatever it is that you're involved in, whether it's your mind, whether it's music, whether it's sports, you hit it right on the nail on the head. And we all had those experiences. But typically the level of those experiences that come about in terms of timing and changing time and feeling it is the deliberate practice that went into it. In the opening of my my book, we talk about the slopes of life. And I describe in much detail of going up a chairlift when or landing, parking in a parking lot, Lake Louise, when massive amounts of snow have fallen. So I got powder. It's going to be unbelievable. And I know it. And I've lived for it. I've been skiing for 30 years prior to that. So all that time I'd put in before, but I mean, I knew this was it. I knew it. I got on the chair, get to the top, go off a 30-foot cornice and drop into powder up to my neck, have total control of 3D. A feeling meaning that you're in the snow, not on the snow. You're like dropping down an elevator shaft, but the more you bring your skis up, the slower you can go. The faster you'll go, the deeper you go, you can slow, and you can control that. And I made a perfect, probably a half-mile run of perfect S turns. That was just like, hey, everything stopped. Everything was just, it was it. And how, where did that count? Once you have those experiences to that level, I think what it does, it turns on a whole bunch of neurons in your brain and all kinds of other things that get stimulated for you to take quantum leaps of growth in your future if you can capture those things. And I'm talking confidence, emotional strength, resilience, no, beating fear right down to finding yourself, your authentic self in that process. All of those are part of these peak experiences that can happen to us. And I just encourage people to understand and grow from those. And like you say, it's changing, it's keeping time from being linear, because the more we have of these, the more we can catapult other people's lives and our own lives forward.
I love that thought process of being in control of those moments, of those peak experiences, which is also the name of your book. Because sometimes it just feels like they just happen and we just luck into them. But to change the mindset of thinking, no, you are in control of creating them, that just changes everything.
Yeah, yeah. And then finding them
Yeah.
and making them happen. Yeah, yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said about that. Another chapter in the book focuses quite a bit on my bike. I took a bicycle ride when, we know sharpening your saw, getting yourself together, so on. So part of my career, I was a basketball coach and school teacher for, I don't know, 14, I guess 12 years. And then I became the assistant coach at California Lutheran University, where I was allowed to take whatever education I wanted to take. And of course, I had to think about that. And I wanted to sharpen my saw. So I rode a bike from Jasper, Alberta to Thousand Oaks, California, a pedal bike, and I did a solo ride the whole time. So all kinds of peak experiences occurred and learning and doing that kind of ride, 2,300 miles in 23 days. I averaged 100 miles a day doing it.
Wow.
And on no support at all. It was crazy fun. Being that to be in that kind of shape. But prior to that, I was riding 30 miles a day for probably 3 years because I didn't drive a car. Well, I was the head coach at Westlake Village. So I was, good bike shape, and I knew, and I'd done other tours by myself and with groups and so on. But along the trail, oh my gosh, were there experiences upon experiences. I just want to share one real quick with you. When I got into the Redwoods area around Crescent City, California or so. So I went all the way through Glacier Park and all the way down through Montana, Idaho, across and I did take the Amtrak from Boise to Portland. So leaving from Portland, I got down into the Redwoods and camp, and they have biking hikes along the coast, which are pretty cool. A couple bucks in those days, and I'm talking the 80s. But anyway, I'm camping. Some guy shows up and he's camping next to me, and he's got ski poles. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this guy's got a nice, nice bike ride and everything, but he's got ski poles. So I asked him, what's up with the ski poles? He's a German. He's going from Alaska, and he had the ski poles in Alaska, and he's going to San Diego, and started telling me the stories of Alaska. And I just went, okay, but when you're riding long distance like that, every ounce matters. I mean, you pay attention to your weight, So I'm thinking, oh, this guy's built really strong. So anyway, his name's Axel, and I say, hey, see you later, Axel. The next day I leave, and I don't see him for 2 days or don't see any sight of him. I just cruise down the road. And in the typical routine, you stop for a big breakfast. I mean, you eat massive amounts. You have to eat a lot of food, of course, to energize getting through each day. So I find this breakfast spot, and I pull in, and I think it might have been around Modesto or something. It was kind of a trendy place, I'll say, and probably 20 or 30 cyclists in there. So I'm sitting in there with these cyclists and having breakfast, and I'm a bit of an anomaly where I've come from, and they're looking at my bike and having a lot of fun. And I'm feeling like, oh wow, this is, I'd kind of been a lot of solo time, so I felt like being on the spotlight felt cool,
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there eating breakfast, and I look up, and there goes the ski poles down the road. I jump out of my chair, I run out the door, and I yell, hey, Axel, hey, Axel. Right. And so he stops and comes back, and I look back at the cafe, and everybody's face is up against the windows, and they're thinking, what is this crazy guy doing? Because they thought I was saying,
A
chaos.
different word.
Can you believe it?
Oh man.
Sometimes we don't hear what we should,
Yeah, that's
you know?
hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I can't even imagine being alone for that long. And I think there's a lot there that there so rarely are we alone. Even if we are literally by ourselves, we all have our phones.
And had
So,
no phone in those days, no GPS, none of that when I did that ride. So you really were and what I've learned in that, because I've done backpack trips for 5 days solo before as well, is that your desire to socialize goes through the roof.
mm,
And you realize how much you love it when you take it away for that period. And same with the riding. Like when I was riding down the coast, I mean, yeah, I'd run into people and so on, but I wasn't really connecting with people until I
right,
came across a group of 4 guys, 2 Mormons and 2 Aussies. The Aussies had dialed in equipment. It looked just, fancy stuff. The Mormons had pretty rough stuff coming. So they had taken the train out of, from, I'm going to say what, Provo, and jumped the train, went to Portland and got off there and started riding down the coast. And they had their gear, they were camping out and everything else. The Aussies had all the nice gear, but they didn't have camp out gear. Anyway, I rode with these guys for about 3 or 4 days and got to have a real great camaraderie. And of course, I was raised in Idaho, so I knew a little bit about the Mormon religion, and it was really fun to kind of be the integrator in the middle between the Mormons and the Aussies, as the Aussies drank more beer at night in the camp and so on. Really good fun.
I can
But
only imagine.
the desire to communicate when you're left alone and the kind of relationships, I think it's even a deeper kind of thing when you have and respect and kind of feel the need to have it.
Mm.
Interesting. That's been my outcome of kind of the lonely side of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about like, when I would travel for work and it was usually just me and um I would typically go to a restaurant, get takeout and bring it back to my hotel room rather than sit in a restaurant and eat by myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was in my 20s and 30s. Now in my 40s, I'd be like, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
I would kind of cherish a little bit more of that time and that introspection. Like I started earlier this year, I just took a notion
Yeah.
that I wanted to start walking 5 miles every day. I don't know
Good on you.
why I picked 5. I mean, there was nothing to it other than I'm going to do this. And I did it for 30 days straight. And then it got hot. So I'm going to start it up again when it starts cooling down a little bit. But I absolutely loved it. And giving myself that gift of time, of having that hour
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
I was just completely surrounded by nature. I was able to observe things around me. I could be with my own thoughts without letting distractions get in the way. It was really, really great. And I feel like that's something that the world could use a little bit more of.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. That forest walk or whatever, getting on my bike and riding through the park and just, yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
we need our think time and we need our downtime. And sometimes people get pretty wound up, a little
yeah.
bit like a pretzel, and they need to realize kind of where their real value and purpose and what they really want to do that makes them happy. So
Mm,
often what makes us happy is where we go in life. And I just, it's challenging when you see people that are living lives for somebody else rather than understanding themselves and helping people understand that and grab that and get their purpose in place will make everybody else around them. One quick example of that, I had a leader of a company that's a very strong D in the disc profile, but a real strong woman. She's basically doing everybody's work for him in the end. I mean, she wanted it all done well and excellence, but she was, over everybody's shoulder and so on. And finally, I had to say, look, here's your breakthrough. Pull away. Let people learn through self-discipline, their own mistakes, and grow. And everybody will be better. And guess what? It happened. especially her husband.
Mm.
Especially her husband. Now he's speaking out. He's running the company, doing it. And to see the growth when sometimes you have to help people pull away or see that, it's fun to see those breakthroughs.
Mm.
Why I like doing what I do.
Well, and you do so much. And, we were talking offline just about how the world, our country, society handles age. And that conversation was really brought to bear with
Mhm.
President Biden announcing not to run due to, his age and as we change. And watching you, like I would never even think about your age because you do so much and you've got so much planned. Like you were living life full out. Is that something you intentionally are trying to do for other seniors, or is that just a happy byproduct?
Oh no, I've run into so many seniors that are on the same track that I am, in terms of speaking engagements and things that we come across. It's you know, I'll tell you the story that kind of put it in perspective for me is I went to my high school reunion just recently. There was a 50-year reunion. And of course, everybody had turned 65. Well, I'm 68. So there's, in that age bracket. And those that 65 and retired, I could see that they didn't have the mojo going. I'll just call it that.
Mm.
And when I gave my talk at the end, they gave me an opportunity to do a little talk because I was kind of a star in athletics or whatever. And when I was talking to them at the end, I said, look, everybody, you know the difference between the rear view mirror and the windshield. A lot of you have to realize the rear view mirror is very small, but the windshield is what's in front of us. And look at all the opportunities we have. Don't let a day go by without making a difference, folks. And that was really my message, and it still is my message for anybody. What's here now and present now, you can make a difference today. You can make yourself happier today in some way. Do it. Don't sit around and stew about what's not right. Go do something, take action. And
Mhm.
if you can be handicapped, you can be whatever, but you can do something. If your mind's working and so on, keep busy because that's how you stay. I think body in motion stays in motion. We all know that.
Yeah,
And
physics, man.
yeah,
These laws of physics exist for a reason.
I'm pumped up about getting a hip replacement in the next few months so that I can get back to golfing better and kind of getting things going because I've been limping with my right leg for 10 plus years now, and it's time. And I'm convinced this is going to be the answer. And look out, I'll be back. I want to shoot my age before I die.
That would be
Oh,
amazing.
it would be, especially I got to live to 100 the way I'm golfing now. So,
Well, I feel like growing up, especially like in the 80s and 90s, like there was something that went around the social media about the ages of the Golden Girls when they were filming.
right.
And it was something like one of them was like 49
Yeah.
and then like 55, 53, and then the mother was, slightly older. But I thought like that's what so many people thought old age is supposed to look like.
Right.
I think about First Lady Barbara Bush.
Yeah.
She was always old.
Yeah. She had the old look.
She
Yeah.
she had the old look, but it seems to be shifting. So there definitely is this push towards longevity and
Yeah.
um I'm grateful for it. I'm so glad that this is the kind of the world that we're going towards. Because then we can
Well,
have more peak experiences, right?
that's right. Have more of those. No question, the world has improved in understanding all kinds of things to take care of ourselves. But we've got a long ways to go still. I
Yeah.
don't know that we take that time to take care of ourselves as much as we should.
Mm. So tell us a little bit more as we're kind of wrapping up some of the,
Yeah.
experience that you had, mentally, emotionally, spiritually in putting together the book, Peak Experiences, and kind of what
Yeah.
was that
Mm.
process for you?
Right.
And are there more books to come?
Yeah. Yeah, there is. The process, I mean, I've I'll go right back to when I was at the University of Calgary and taking a bunch of educational psychology class. My first degrees, Bachelor of Education and economics major. But Abraham Maslow showed up on the screen with the self-actualization, and I read through and went, oh, this peak experience thing. And then I started, probably from that point forward, had it in my mind. Now, as I've gone on, and once I hit the point where I kind of knew my why, and I knew it was time to do the book, what I did is I turned the video on and I told my stories. I could tell a story better than I could write a story. I realized that. And so I told the stories, and then I transcribed that into text and put it into my book. The things I learned in emotionality, I think, was once I actually had the book done and put it up onto Amazon and realized that's going to be there longer than me.
Mm.
Maybe a lot of people, when I die, I'll buy the book and my inheritance will be worth something, who knows? But the fact that it's there is a legacy. And I think
Yeah.
the legacies that we put, and it's also, passive income. So I started to think more of what else can I do like that? And of course, the Audible and the other things and those type of things. But leaving a legacy, my grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren will be able to read this book, and it'll have an effect. And I think that alone was a very powerful feeling once I got to that point. I think the learning area that I go into, and the discipline of learning and comparing what goes on in education to building KPIs and building a business structure out of that, is really valuable for people to understand, and what self-discipline is, and how to create a powerful self-discipline machine in building teams.
Mm.
I go into a lot of depth, and I have a lot of pride in that. I spent 12 years in education and took it very, very seriously. So
Mm.
I'm excited about people reading that chapter, just for those that are thinking, how do we educate, and do we need to reform, and do we need to rethink? And then how do we manage people, right? When we're managing people, do we do it through self-discipline where they learn to manage themselves, or do we put the hammer down and make them do it our way? Well, there's a balance, and you got to understand those things. But I think getting true motivation is about getting people into a self-discipline and really wanting to do it for the good of all and the good of the company, of course. And all of that goes in building a business.
Yeah. Discipline is such I've wrestled, we'll say, with discipline my whole life. And you mentioned DISC. There's many other different personality things that are out there. I loved what I learned about myself through DISC. I also love learning about myself through the Clifton Strengths.
Right.
And discipline is one of the Clifton Strengths. It is my bottom, absolute last strength is discipline. And so I kind of remember seeing that and thinking like, well, that explains it. It's not that I did anything wrong. It's just a bottom strength. Like I felt like I got a pass. Like, cool, I don't have to worry about this anymore. And that was a few years ago. And of course, I'm still always growing and learning and evolving. And just this week, I saw a post on Instagram where someone was equating discipline, and I don't have the quote exactly right, but the long and short of it was, discipline is the greatest act of self-love, because when you are disciplined in something, you are doing it for your future self, not your current self.
Love it.
Right?
Yeah, growth mindset stuff going forward.
That hit me so much deeper. And that's part of why I started walking that 5 miles. Like that was part of like, okay, I can do anything. Just because discipline doesn't come naturally to me doesn't mean I can't. So that was part of like, okay, I'm just gonna, challenge myself because I'm very competitive. So changing that from a discipline to a competition, even if it was just with myself, was a huge change. So
my suggestion for you, Catryn, on
please.
that 5 mile walk, change your dog's name to 5 Mile.
Taking 5 Mile on a walk. Oh, that's so good. So my last question for you before we wrap up is just to talk a little bit more about self-discipline, kind of your ethos on it, and how someone like me who maybe doesn't have it naturally can help to find it.
Yeah, it's natural for us relative to any discipline and where we are in our lives. We have to compare to something.
Mm.
And so we spend a lot of our lives saying, how do I size up to Tony Robbins, or I size up to, and we spend a lot of time rather than saying who we are, right? And how can I be the best version of me? Where's the potential and how do I find my potential to be the best of what I am? Sure, you have to compare a little to get that feeling. But once you get to a certain point of confidence, I think you can take that thought and become the best version of you that you can become. You have to learn from everybody else, but I don't think it's smart to be in the comparative state of how do I size up? I think it's more of how do I size up with myself of what my potential is and what brings me the fulfillment, of getting where I want to go. And that is not always easy, right? In terms of how you measure that, because discipline comes down to kind of what you're measuring. And so I found a lot of success in having people measure what they're doing and then comparing, but then taking that back to what could have I done or what can I do better? I'm talking about after the exam or after, you kind of get results and it didn't work out right. It's important to know where you stand within the group to become the best you can of yourself. So you can't just leave it and say, hey, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to do it right. You've got to have a metric. You've got to have some kind of thing to compare to as to where you want to go. But the more you can self-internalize that, I think the more powerful it is.
Mm. Well, Coach, this has been such a lovely conversation. I always appreciate and take so much away from our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with the audience, with putting it onto Peak Experiences so that we can further dive into it and have some more time to kind of marinate in your wisdom.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm humbled by your nice comments. Thank you.
Well, well, truth is truth.
So be it. Yeah.
So for the listeners, how is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, certainly you can go to the web and look up Coach Hess Peak Experiences, and you're going to find me on Amazon there. I'm all over LinkedIn under Coach Hess, Facebook, Coach Hess. That's kind of my brand. I have a website, of course, and I have a couple websites running now, so you can point to those. One of them is an Action Coach website that I use, and then the other one is coachhess.com. Right now, I still got Action Coach as my email, but you can find me out there, and I'll be glad to, on my website, you can find a place to get a 30-minute conversation with the author. Glad to take those on, find a spot on my calendar, and let's have a talk about something you found in Peak Experiences that you can relate to.
That is such a generous offer. I will definitely have all of those links available in the show notes. Thank you again for such a lovely conversation.
Thank you, Catryn.
And to the listeners, I want to hear what you took away from this. Is it about finding your why? Is it about how time can work for you? Is it about what a peak experiences you've experienced in your life? Is it about spending more time alone? There was so much that we covered in here. I don't even think I captured it just in that little summary, but please let me know what you thought and make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast to make sure that you hear all future ones and rate it because it definitely helps out a lot. Check out Coach Hess, and until next time, everyone, take care.